Did you know that steak has been a cherished part of American dining since the early 19th century, way before your favorite mac and cheese or grilled chicken? It's like the OG of hearty, mouth-watering meals. However, many steakhouse chains today have failed to continue to satisfy the American palate despite their very sizzling beginnings. These are the stories of those steakhouses that once had diners lining up like they'd struck gold. But now, well, let's just say they're more like the side of broccoli that gets politely pushed around the plate. So, grab your steak knife and a bib. We're about to dig into the meaty morsels of some of your favorite steakhouses, which have, unfortunately, fallen off the radar. Number 10. Quaker Steak and Lube. If you love to eat your steak in a room of classic cars, motorbikes, and all that cool stuff, this would have been the perfect place. Except, well, the cool decor wasn't enough to keep business going. Quaker Steak and Lube started in 1974 in Sharon, Pennsylvania, and was the brainchild of George Warren III and Gary Mazzaros. The novelty? You guessed it, car-themed decor, a wing sauce menu on the hood of a classic car, and waitresses decked out in auto mechanic garb. Who wouldn't love such a place? For years, Quaker Steak and Lube spread like wildfire, boasting over 60 locations across the United States. But alas, even the most souped-up engines can stall. In 2014, things took a bit of a detour. The company's wallet was running on empty, and Wells Fargo sued them for a $4.14 million debt. In 2015, they faced bankruptcy filing, but picked up the pieces of what was left when a truck shop company acquired the chain. Things started looking up for Quaker, but sadly, they dropped from 59 chains to just 34. Number 9. Black Angus Steakhouse. In the world of steakhouses, Black Angus was once the majestic bull reigning supreme. It charged into the scene in 1964 near Seattle, Washington. With its commitment to serving only the finest hand-cut USDA choice steaks, Black Angus grew a loyal following, expanding to over 100 locations across the U.S. However, the bull started to show signs of fatigue in the 2000s. Rising beef prices, changing dining trends, and increased competition from both upscale and casual dining establishments led to the gradual decline of this once mighty beast. In 2009, they filed for bankruptcy, and with debts as high as $500 million. Fast forward to 2020, and the chain reduced to just 34, and finally 32 as of 2023. Number 8. McCormick and Schmicks. When it comes to seafood and steaks, few did it better than McCormick and Schmicks. Founded in 1972 by Bill McCormick and Doug Schmick, this chain was the go-to spot for those who wanted the surf and turf experience par excellence. Riding a wave of popularity, McCormick and Schmicks expanded rapidly. 2004 was the year of glory for the star, with a whopping 51 locations spread across 22 states. Then came 2012, the year it got swept off its feet by Landry's Hospitality Group. Talk about a merger made in steak heaven. But just 5 years later, only 55 restaurants were left standing, and in 2023, that number again reduced to only 26. Seems like they might have needed a magic wand to keep those numbers up. Number 7. Claim Jumper. Claim Jumper burst onto the scene like a cowboy at a square dance in 1977. With a theme straight out of the gold rush, it was as if prospectors had struck a vein of culinary gold. Miners would trade in their pickaxes for steak knives any day. At its peak, Claim Jumper was more packed than a stagecoach on a Sunday. With over 50 locations, it was like a gold rush all over again. Only this time, it was for the juicy cuts and hearty portions. But alas, every mining town eventually dries up. Following the economic downturns of 2009 and 2010, the company faced bankruptcy with $500 million in debt. Somehow, they managed to pull through, with 45 locations still in operation around the U.S. But that didn't save the company, and as of 2023, they only have 11 remaining steakhouses, which is a reminder that even the boldest prospectors sometimes hit the ground. Number 6. Bonanza Ponderosa Steakhouse. Yeehaw! Bonanza and Ponderosa, sibling steakhouse chains, galloped onto the scene in the 1960s, drawing inspiration from the rugged charm of the Wild West. With affordable prices and hearty portions, they quickly became family favorites. At their peak, these chains were more widespread than tumbleweeds on a windy day, with over 600 locations combined. They were like the gold rush of steakhouses, attracting folks from all corners of the country. But like any gold mine, things eventually started to run dry. In 2008, they filed for bankruptcy and came out of it a year later, but it slowly started declining after that. 3 years later, in 2011, more than half of its locations were shut down. I mean, out of operation kind of shut down. And you would wonder, what could have happened? Well, it doesn't stop there. Fast forward to 2019, and that number grew even smaller to just 75 outlets. As of 2023, the once famous steakhouse has only 21 operational outlets. Seems like the Wild West charm just couldn't wrangle in the new generation of diners. Number 5. Lone Star Steakhouse. Howdy, partner! Lone Star Steakhouse rode into town in 1989, bringing a taste of Texas to every plate. With cowboy-inspired decor and generously portioned meals of steaks, seafoods, and salads, it quickly gained a following. At its peak, Lone Star had over 200 locations across the United States. They were literally the McDonald's of steak, but their reign mostly lasted during the 90s. At some point, they were swallowed up by a sea of other new and similar steakhouses on the map. So what did Lone Star do? Well, they did what any struggling business would do. They toned down their much-known Western theme and pimped it up with a more sophisticated and elegant dining feel, probably to lure in the big spenders. But sadly, that didn't work out. In 2009, the economic downturn pushed the business to its limits even more, and they had to close down 27 of their remaining 179 locations. By January of 2017, it was reduced to just 16 steakhouses still in operation. And today, well, let's just say it has truly lived up to its name, because there is only one Lone Star left in the US, and it is located in Guam. Number 4. Charlie Brown Steakhouse. Charlie Brown Steakhouse was not your average steak joint. Founded in 1966 in Warren, New Jersey, this steakhouse had character. It offered a cozy, rustic charm that made it feel like home, albeit one where you could devour a juicy steak and indulge in your culinary desires. For years, it had the steak-loving masses hooked. The secret to its early success? Well, the steaks were cooked to perfection. The ambience was warm and inviting, and it was a place where friends and family could gather for a hearty meal and a great time. It was, in essence, a recipe for steakhouse glory. However, the business started to see a slow decline in 2010, with poor revenue across the whole chain. 20 out of its 49 locations closed down, and after a few years, just 9 were still operating. Then came 2020. Yeah, the COVID pandemic, and the remaining chains could not hold it together anymore. So 8 out of the 9 eventually shut down permanently. The company was still determined to stay afloat, so it managed to open one more location. And now, as of today, Charlie Brown can still boast of 2 locations, in Woodbury and Scotch Plains. Number 3. BLT Steakhouse. BLT opened up in 2004 and was literally the steakhouse chain poised to redefine high-end dining. Imagine strolling into a sleek, modern space where every detail exudes sophistication. From the plush leather seating to the ambient lighting, BLT was the epitome of culinary glam. It was the kind of place where you half expected to see Hollywood A-listers casually sipping martinis. And then there was the menu. Each dish was a work of art, a masterpiece of culinary innovation. The dry-aged steaks were the crown jewels of the menu, tender and succulent, cooked to perfection. But sometimes, even good food is not enough to keep the doors open, and this elegant steakhouse chain was soon on the verge of disappearing into the shadows. First, in April 2020, they took a loan of $3.3 million Paycheck Protection Program to help the business survive during COVID, and for the most part, to pay their workers. But sadly, 2 years later in 2022, the loan still hadn't been paid, and some locations eventually closed down permanently. As of today, only 7 BLT steakhouses and 2 BLT Prime restaurants remain in business. Number 2. York Steakhouse. Stepping into a York Steakhouse today would be like stepping into a time machine back to the 1960s. With its old-school decor and menu, it offered a nostalgic experience that many just loved. Founded in 1966 in Columbus, Ohio, the restaurant was thriving on some good times. In just 10 years, they had successfully expanded into a chain with most locations in shopping malls. Talk about strategic placements. In 1976, the General Mills Corporation purchased the entire steakhouse, and you can say York grew even more. At its peak, it boasted of almost 180 locations in the US. But then came the 80s, where food courts and fast food restaurants were slowly taking the spotlight, and York was, as well, slowly fading away. By 2023, York has literally lost all of its glory, with only one steakhouse left standing, which is located in Columbus, Ohio, where it all began. Number 1. Sizzler. In the heyday of disco balls and bell-bottoms, this place was the spot for steak lovers. With their crispy garlic cheese toast and a salad bar that seemed to stretch for miles, and steaks that practically danced on the grill, Sizzler was the epitome of 70s dining cool. It started operations in 1958 in Culver City, California, and then it was known as Del's Sizzler Family Steakhouse. This place had everything you could ever want from a steakhouse, and the best part? It wasn't a high-priced restaurant, so the prices were a big steal. And tipping wasn't even allowed here, just so that they could invite in more families. And boy, did they sell out big time. Within only 4 years, they had opened about 100 restaurants, mainly in California, and their growth continued throughout the 80s and 90s. However, towards the end of the decade, the sizzling Sizzler started to run cold. By 1996, a whopping 136 locations shut down. Fast forward to 2020, they filed for a Chapter 11 bankruptcy after suffering COVID's curse, mainly because it's more of a dining restaurant. So they tried to bring in new concepts to favor takeouts and outdoor dining, but that didn't work out well. And as of 2023, their locations are down to 80. Well, you can agree that Sizzler's struggle isn't as bad as most steakhouses on this list.